Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something I think, well, everyone grapples with. How do we actually handle life? The ups and downs.
Yeah, the inevitable curveball.
Exactly. And we've got this really interesting source material. It's a transcript from a talk by Ajahn Brahm called Having a Good Relationship with Life.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal here, our mission, is to kind of unpack this idea.
Yeah.
See if we can find a different way to live by really looking at our relationship with, well, everything that happens.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
Because the core insight, right off the bat, it's almost revolutionary, isn't it?
How so?
Well, that you're suffering, a lot of it anyway, isn't really about the event. It's about your reaction, your relationship to the event.
Okay, wait. So it's not the bad thing happening. It's me reacting badly to the bad thing.
Largely, yeah. Or at least that's where a huge chunk of the suffering comes from. If you can control your relationship with what happens, you get more control over the pain itself. That's the argument.
Right. That really stands out, that our inner response is the key. Because it's so easy to think, oh, if only this thing outside me changed, I'd be fine. My boss, my commute, whatever.
The external circumstance.
But Ajahn Brahm sort of flips that. He's saying what really matters is what you do with what you've got, the attitude you bring.
The attitude. And he argues that so much of our unhappiness, things like worry and anxiety, they often come from this negative internal stance, like looking at the future and just seeing all the potential problems.
Focusing on what could go wrong. We all do that, don't we?
Totally. Or looking at ourselves or other people and just zeroing in on the faults, the problems. And the key, he says, isn't necessarily changing the world or the difficult experience itself. Sometimes you can't. It's changing how you relate to it, your connection.
Okay, so shifting perspective, that sounds good. But how? How do you actually do that when something genuinely tough happens?
Well, he gives some really relatable examples, which helps.
I like that.
He talks about giving these talks, right? And sometimes people get up and leave in the middle.
Oh, awkward. I'd probably feel terrible.
Right. Most people would feel rejected, maybe a bit insulted. But he reframes it. He thinks, oh, good. Fewer people. It's quieter now. Better for meditation.
So finding the silver lining, even in something like that.
Exactly. Actively searching for a different angle. It's like training your brain to spot the hidden upside.
Like a mental muscle you need to build.
Yeah, precisely. He gives another one. Getting dumped.
Ouch. Okay.
Pretty universally seen as bad, right?
Yeah, generally.
But for him, looking back, he saw, well, freedom. He saved money. And ultimately, it was part of the path that led him to become a monk.
Wow. Okay, so even major setbacks.
Even major ones. Losing a job, a huge stressor for most people. He suggests seeing it as maybe an unexpected chance to rest or an opening for something new. It's always asking, what else could this mean?
The sheer nerve of finding a positive spin there is kind of amazing.
It is. It challenges our automatic negative reactions.
And then he gets into promotions, which is funny.
Yeah, tell us about that.
He sort of jokes that maybe we shouldn't even want them because, you get more money, but somehow it never feels like enough anyway. But the extra stress? Oh, that's guaranteed.
That's brilliant. It's a great little commentary on how we chase things, isn't it? More money, higher status.
Assuming it equals happiness.
Right. But the chase itself can actually, wear down our peace of mind. So he's nudging us to question those automatic goals, what really brings well-being.
Now, he also brings in a much bigger concept, rebirth, the Buddhist idea.
Okay, broadening the perspective.
Yeah. It gives us a longer view, suggesting, this life isn't just a one-off deal. It's part of a bigger journey, more learning.
A much larger time scale for our experiences.
Right. And he jokes quite charmingly, I thought, about wanting to be reborn as a family dog.
As a dog? Why?
Just the simplicity, the contentment he sees there, food, walks, naps. Seems pretty good.
It highlights that happiness isn't necessarily tied to complexity or achievements or possessions.
Exactly. It's a sort of cosmic perspective shift. But then he brings it back down to earth.
Okay.
He acknowledges, look, life is going to have disappointment, pain, difficulty. It's just part of the package.
Unavoidable stuff.
Totally unavoidable. But again, it's our relationship to those bits, the difficult bits, that shapes the whole experience.
So loving all parts of life, even the unpleasant ones, that's the sign of a good relationship with it.
That's what he suggests. But how do you actually love the unpleasant? That sounds hard.
Well, maybe it's not love like, yay, suffering, but more like Acceptance.
Acceptance, okay.
Recognizing that these difficulties, they teach us things, right?
Yeah.
Things comfort never could. They can be catalysts for growth.
That makes sense. He tells this really lovely story, actually, about teaching meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Way back in 1973, he ended up teaching like 650 high school students. Total unexpected.
Wow, that's a tough crowd.
You'd think. But years later, one of those students came up to him and thanked him, said it had this huge positive impact on his life.
Good kid.
Yeah. It just shows how the relationship you have with what you do, even unexpected things, can ripple out in ways you never predict.
That's fascinating. A small, unplanned moment having such a lasting effect. It really speaks to just engaging with what's happening, doesn't it?
It does. Now, what about the everyday stuff? The hay fever that drives you nuts, or the aches and pains that just show up?
The chronic little annoyances.
Yeah. He says, look, you probably can't just wish them away, but you can change how you experience them. Instead of fighting them, resisting, trying to get rid of them, approach them with kindness, compassion.
Kindness towards your hay fever.
Sort of, like allowing it to be there without letting it completely ruin your day. He compares it to learning from a difficult teacher. You don't have to like the teacher, but you can still learn.
That idea of meeting difficulty with kindness, that feels really different. Our instinct is usually to tense up, right? To fight back against pain or discomfort.
Oh.
And that resistance, he'd argue, probably just amplifies the suffering. Softening that internal response, just accepting, okay, this is here right now. That could change things.
And then he uses this analogy that you will probably never forget.
Uh-oh, what is it?
The dog poo analogy.
Dog poo? Seriously?
Seriously. He says difficult experiences are like stepping in dog poo.
Okay, I'm following.
Your first reaction is disgust, anger, complaining. Rick, ugh, this is awful.
Naturally.
But he says, don't just complain. Metaphorically, take it home. Use it as fertilizer.
Fertilizer.
Yeah. To grow better mangoes, sweeter outcomes in the future. So the unpleasant thing becomes fuel for something good.
Wow. That's vivid. So even really bad stuff, like you mentioned, cancer, that can be fertilizer too.
That's the implication, that even the worst experiences can contain seeds of learning and profound growth if we have the right relationship with them. It's about transforming it, not just enduring it.
Extracting value from adversity. The memorable way to put it, certainly.
Definitely memorable. He also talks about stillness, about listening.
How does that connect?
Well, like a quiet student in class absorbs more information, right? If we're mentally quiet and mindful in life, we can actually learn from our experiences.
Instead of just being caught up in the internal noise.
Yeah.
The complaints, the worries.
Exactly. If your mind is constantly chattering, this is bad, I hate this, what if this happens? You miss the lessons. You miss the subtle things. He even says he finds lots of four-leaf clovers because he practices this quiet observation.
Oh. So stillness leads to luck. Or at least noticing luck.
Maybe noticing, yeah. Cultivating that receptive state.
Okay. And what about things like worry and anger?
Yeah. He tackles those head on. Worrying about the future, he basically says it's pointless.
Pointless. Why?
Because the future is unknown. It's impermanent, always shifting. Worrying doesn't actually change it just makes you miserable now.
True. You suffer in advance for things that might never happen.
Precisely. And anger, he's very blunt. Anger only hurts the person who's angry.
It burns you up inside.
Right. He tells this funny story about a teacher who used to fine his students every time he shouted at them.
Get out.
For real.
Apparently. And one student internalized this so well that later in life, when his boss was yelling at him, the student just started laughing.
Laughing at his boss.
Yeah, because he saw the boss was just, costing himself metaphorical money with all that anger. It totally shifted his own response. He wasn't taking it personally.
That's incredible. It shows you really can change your internal reaction, even to something as potent as someone else's anger.
Yeah, it puts the agency back with you. And even mistakes, he says, are just learning opportunities.
We all make them.
Oh, constantly. He shares a story, quite funny, about chanting for a dying man. He accidentally chanted for the man to recover when the family wanted chants for a peaceful passing.
Oh, no.
Total mix-up. But he learned from it. Now, he always asks what kind of chanting people prefer in those situations.
A very practical lesson learned from a mistake. It's human.
Very human.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea about loss, which I found quite liberating. Loss. How can loss be liberating?
Well, losing things, maybe money, relationship, even a job, He suggests seeing it not just as an ending, but as an opening.
An opening.
Yeah, an opportunity for new experiences, maybe even a strange kind of freedom. He mentioned being unemployed during COVID, which meant he couldn't travel far, but he ended up exploring Western Australia more deeply than ever before.
Finding opportunity in limitation.
Exactly. It challenges that deep-seated fear we have of losing things. Maybe it's not always the catastrophe we imagine.
Reframing loss as a potential beginning. That lessens the sting, doesn't it?
It does. And speaking of uncertainty, he talks about the future being unpredictable. He tells a story about getting this astrological reading, a horoscope.
Oh boy. Was it accurate?
Hilariously inaccurate, just completely wrong, which reinforces his point. You just don't know what's coming.
Right. Forget the predictions.
Yeah. And even, really wise people. He asked his own highly respected meditation master the big question, why? The meaning of it all.
And what profound answer did he get?
The master just said, nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. Which sounds maybe bleak, but Ajahn Brahm took it as highlighting the limits of our intellect. Some things you can't figure out, you just have to experience.
Embracing the mystery, the uncertainty.
Yeah. And one last bit, this was about relationships. A piece of advice a father-in-law gave to his new son-in-law.
Okay, what was it?
He told the son-in-law basically, you see all my daughter's faults, those imperfections. Well, that's precisely why she married you, because you have yours too.
That's brilliant. And true.
It's such a great humorous take on accepting imperfection, isn't it? In others and implicitly in ourselves. It's not about finding perfection. It's about the connection despite, or maybe even because of, the flaws.
Accepting the whole package. Beautiful.
So wrapping all this up, the thread that runs through everything seems to be this. Happiness, well-being. It's not really determined by what happens.
But by how we relate to it. How we respond.
Yes. Choosing that positive or at least accepting response over the negative one, that seems to be the absolute core message.
And that reminder he mentions from a clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
This too shall pass.
Oh, that's powerful.
It really is. It applies to everything, good or bad. It gives perspective, especially when you're in the thick of something difficult. It won't last forever.
That's a comforting thought. Now, he did also answer some specific listener questions, which really grounded these ideas.
Oh, good. Practical application.
Yeah. One person wrote in, and it was tough, homeless, freezing temperatures, feeling like they'd lost everything.
Wow. What can you even say to that?
Well, his response was interesting. He stressed first the importance of kindness from others in that situation, but also the power of the person's own attitude.
Even in that state.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cultivating that little bit of hope that something will turn up, feeling he referenced Dickens' Mr. Micawber.
Yeah.
And crucially, holding on to inner peace, inner happiness, even when the external stuff is gone.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It must be. But he used an analogy from their own monastery. They got robbed once.
Robbed. A monastery.
Yep. They took material things. But, he said, they couldn't steal their peace. They couldn't steal their forgiveness. That core well-being remained untouched because it wasn't dependent on the stuff.
That's a profound illustration. Our inner resources, hope, contentment, they can be anchors, even in the worst storms.
Exactly. Then another question came from someone dealing with chronic pain and shortness of breath. They were finding it hard to relax in meditation.
Understandable. Pain makes it tough.
Totally. He suggested something called the Empress 3 Questions meditation. Basically, making the present experience the pain, the breathlessness, the object of meditation.
Focusing on the difficult sensation, not trying to escape it.
Right, but approaching it with kindness and compassion, recognizing that a lot of the suffering isn't just the physical sensation, it's the resistance to it.
Ah, okay.
And he brought in the idea of the 2 darts. Heard of that?
The 2 darts. Tell me more.
So the first dart is the actual physical pain. You get hit, it hurts, that's the first dart. Often we can't avoid that one.
Right, the injury, the illness.
But then comes the second dart. That's our mental and emotional reaction, the fear, the anger, the frustration, the why me, the catastrophizing about the pain.
Okay, I see. The mental amplification.
Precisely. And that second dart, he says, is largely optional. We don't have to throw it at ourselves. We have significant control over that emotional response.
And that second dart is often where most of the suffering lies, isn't it? Not just the pain, but the whole narrative around it.
Exactly. So managing chronic pain becomes less about fighting the first dart and more about not adding the second one. Observing the physical sensation with acceptance, with kindness. He even shared an example of someone living peacefully with severe chronic pain using this approach.
That's incredibly practical. shifting focus from fighting the unavoidable to managing the avoidable reaction. That offers real hope.
It does. And finally, someone asked about dealing with angry people.
Common challenge.
His advice was pretty straightforward. First, if you can, just avoid them.
Sensible.
But if you can't, respond with peace. Don't meet anger with anger. Non-confrontation.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, for sure. But he told a story about another monk getting absolutely furious with him.
What happened?
Ajahn Brahm had used a rag to clean his bowl, and this other monk thought the rag was filthy and just lost it, yelling at him.
Oh, dear.
But Ajahn Brahm just stayed calm, didn't react, didn't argue back, and apparently his calmness made the angry monk feel, well, embarrassed eventually. The anger just fizzled out because of nothing to feed on.
That's the power of non-reaction, isn't it? It de-escalates things. By choosing peace yourself, you can sometimes disarm the anger in others.
Yeah, you don't feel the fire. So as we kind of pull all these threads together from this deep dive, it really comes back to that central theme. Our relationship with life, with whatever it throws at us, that's what shapes our experience.
Far more than the events themselves, perhaps.
Yeah. Shifting perspective, finding the positive, or at least the lesson. Using the difficulties as,
Fertilizer.
fertilizer, exactly. The dog poo becoming mangoes. And focusing on our response. These aren't just abstract ideas, they feel like real tools.
Tools for building resilience, for finding peace, even when things aren't perfect, which, let's face it, is most of the time.
Right. It's about recognizing that the inner landscape really does shape how we see the outer world. That gives you a sense of agency, doesn't it?
It does. Even when things feel out of control externally, you still have influence over your internal state, your relationship to it all.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Think about one challenge you're facing right now. Could be big, could be small. Instead of just wishing it would go away or getting stuck in how bad it feels, what's maybe one tiny shift you could make in your relationship to it?
Just a small shift.
Yeah. Could you look for a hidden lesson, maybe? Or just offer yourself a little more kindness while you're going through it. Just experiment with changing that internal stance slightly.
Because remember,
Even dog poo
can grow beautiful mangoes.
Exactly. Something to think about.